Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news, and Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton have made up to at least some degree after last weekend's shenanigans back at Spa. Hamilton apologised at the time. Alonso has now come back and kind of rolled back a lot of his comments that he made in the heat of the moment last weekend, but also implying that if Hamilton had been another nationality, this would not have been such a big deal. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Quick video today. This is, of course, the great image really of these two champions, like Hamilton to kind of apologise after last weekend's, signed this cap and gave it to Fernando, and he came along and got it this weekend. This of course was the instant, if you guys missed it. Alonso really not at fault for this one. Hamilton afterwards admits, yeah, it's probably his fault really. He, didn't see Alonso in his kind of blind spot right, but I'm sure he will feel like, yeah, well, I probably should have known he was there, all things considered. And Hamilton frustrated because, as it turns out, that Mercedes was probably quick enough for a podium. It was going to be a Red Bull 1-2, but both Ferraris were struggling, and maybe Hamilton could have got a P3. And I do always wonder here whether, because before the race Hamilton was asked, how have you been preparing, and he was like, well look, I've been trying to find out overnight every possible way I can win this race. And he probably realised that he's got to go into this turn like where he was ahead of Alonso, and if he wasn't, then he probably doesn't have a chance to win. So he was probably going all out for the win. Didn't work out in his favour here. But this of course was the comment from Alonso at the time. What an idiot, closing the door from the outside. I mean, we had a mega start up to P2 after Perez's bad start. This guy only knows how to drive and start in first position, which of course objectively is not true, right? Hamilton's won plenty of races from outer position, but there's the other side of it where you could argue that, he sometimes gets into kind of, these situations which feel like, why has he made that mistake? But they're generally few and far between for Hamilton in his career in general. And Alonso has kind of rolled back those comments and said, like, I didn't really mean it. It was kind of one of those things that said heat of the moment, adrenaline type situation. And was also mentioning, right, that after the fact, like, these things shouldn't really be broadcast, right? And it's kind of funny because all the time these guys are on the radio to their engineers saying, okay, yeah, change your differential to this, change your kind of settings to this in terms of power mode, all this type of stuff, adjust your brake bias or whatever the case might be. And of course, they're not broadcasting any of that boring stuff, but, Alonso's trying to have a word with his engineer in the heat of the moment, the frustration, because Alonso probably thought at the time that he was going to be out of the race after an impact that big. Turns out wasn't the case though. But this is what Alonso says. First of all, Lewis is a champion. He's a legend of our time. And then when you say something, and I'm sorry to repeat this, against a British driver, there was a huge media involvement after that. Pretty interesting comment really, and it might have some validity, to be honest. They've been saying a lot of things about Checo Perez, right, and Carlos Sainz, and to myself, Fernando Alonso. If you say something to a Latin driver, everything's a bit more fun. When you say something to others, it's a little bit more serious. But anyway, I apologise. I was not thinking what I said. I don't think there was much to blame in that moment, to be honest. Looking at the replays and such, a first lap incident, we're very close together. Tricky corner really anyway after the Kemmel straight to make sure everything ends up clean. And he kind of went on to confirm specifically with regard to the can only win from first comment, and he says, look, I don't believe that. I mean, it's not that I believe or don't believe, there are facts and it's not that way. So it's something you say in the heat of the moment, but as I said, nothing that I said is true, or there are facts that are completely the opposite, saying that the facts effectively disprove his statement. Of course, look, he's being nice and he's being cordial here, and I think it's good that these guys get on to some degree. They were good rivals back in the day, and I'm sure to a certain extent they still carry a bit of that kind of drama and spice around it all the time. This is how Hamilton and Alonso will always be for their driving days. But Hamilton did actually recently say and named Alonso as his kind of biggest ever rival. He kind of talked about all the drivers that Hamilton's been up against, the Vettels, even the Verstappens of the modern day, right, the Rosbergs, and he was like, no, look, Alonso is that guy who, like, I've always considered to be the biggest rival. So it's good to see the respect there between the guys, and he says, look, I do plan to apologise to Lewis when we get to the TV panel, approach him and say sorry if he understood in that way. I've absolutely no problems with him. As I said, I've got huge respect for him, and I'm saying, look, these things happen in the adrenaline of the moment, like racing incidents, and of course, look, you say things on the radio, you think you're talking with the engineer, but honestly, they're on the broadcast, right? And he was saying, well, when there's a hard tackle and stuff in football and regular sports, those comments don't get broadcasted, like what you having to say to your teammate, unless someone can lip read through the cameras, they don't get broadcasted necessarily. So he wasn't maybe so happy about that. So yeah, a few comments kind of to dive into here, of course. Good to see the respect really between the two of them. Still, I do wonder if these comments would have been any different if it had ended last weekend's race, right? Because he apologised to some degree immediately after the race. Hamilton was, of course, going to apologise to Fernando and say, look, sorry, it was my fault, and kind of has done now. But then after hearing the comments that Alonso said about they can only drive from first and win races, Hamilton was like, I'm not apologising right now because you said that. and then, you know, I guess that they've all come to an agreement at the end of the day. So it's all fun and games, but, you know, does Alonso have a point about the whole nationality thing? Like, because he's a British driver, the media really hop on the bandwagon here, or is it just because he is Lewis Hamilton, right? Is that a difference maker? Like, if that had been George Russell, like, or Lando Norris or something, even though, of course, that specific comment wouldn't really work for those drivers, but, you know, would they have got much attention, or is it just because it's Lewis Hamilton, right? I think that's probably more of the story here, that, you know, because it's Alonso and Hamilton, it's going to be a big deal, right? And maybe he is right that if these comments were said about Perez or about the other drivers, then maybe their media in their respective countries wouldn't have cared so much that the British media maybe has done about this whole Hamilton story. But look, it's Hamilton and Alonso. It's always going to be box office, and I think that's probably one of the key reasons why this was kind of blown out of proportion, you could argue, compared to where it would have been if it was, you know, two drivers not of the caliber of Hamilton and Alonso and the careers that they have had. But that's just my perspective. Of course, you guys might well disagree in the comment section below. Feel free to give your thoughts. And well, that's going to do it for today. Of course, our practice is coming up very shortly indeed, and I'll have another video breaking everything down this afternoon. But very much intrigued your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you are new. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.